Most of you don't know this, but War for the Planet of the Apes is my most anticipated movie of the year. Yeah, even more than Star Wars The Last Jedi. I loved Rise, and especially Dawn. It was actually my favourite movie of that year. Judging by the trailers, I thought I would be able to predict everything that was going to happen, but on the contrary, I couldn't predict anything that was going to happen. And I ended up giving it a 10 out of 10. So with my expectations set so unbelievably high, did the sequel, War for the Planet of the Apes, impress me? Well, let's find out. So what did I like about War for the Planet of the Apes? First off is the story. This is some of the best visual storytelling I have ever seen in a movie. It is so beautifully conveyed, and much like Dawn, a lot of the movie is practically a silent film where we just hear the environment and grunts from the apes. And the accompanying soundtrack really helps drive these more visual scenes too. And that's another thing, the soundtrack. It is composed by Michael Giacchino. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but this is called Quick Movie Reviews for a reason. And he clearly puts all his passion and effort into this movie while he just did a disposable fob job with Spider-Man Homecoming. And I genuinely think that is good prioritizing right there, because there are so much amazing soundtracks in War for the Planet of the Apes, and they really help the scenes carry more emotional and cinematic weight, as well as providing the film with some truly beautiful moments. My only complaint with the soundtrack is that there are a couple of tracks that sound kind of stock, and they didn't deliver the best emotional outcome to the scene. But on the whole, it was damn good. The soundtrack would also become really epic at times, and I don't use that word lightly. Also, everyone's performance was flawless, but Andy Serkis actually delivers his best performance yet. And that really is saying something when you take into account how awesome he was in the last two movies. He just expresses so much emotion through a combination of his body language and, of course, his facial expressions. This is the most real and expressive we have ever seen a motion captured character, and it truly is breathtaking. And what's even more impressive, you actually forget that you are looking at CGI characters here. That's how real they look. Now I will say that on the odd occasion, the apes do look better in some scenes than they do in others, but that is hardly the case. We have always seen CGI look good, but this is one of those rare cases where it actually helps deliver a heartfelt performance, and we rarely ever see that. So to sum up the visuals of this movie, they truly are a spectacle, and by far this is technically one of the best looking movies I have ever seen. Now let's talk about the characters. As a matter of fact, one of my problems with the last film is that I didn't like the human characters. They served their purpose, but they would also interrupt a really nice scene like this one. But thankfully, the main characters of this movie are the apes. And unlike other creature movies, they don't stupidly shy away from showing the CGI creatures. And in this day and age, that has to be commended. Also, very smartly, this film incorporated this little girl, and she gives the apes something to show sentimentality towards whilst they are simultaneously going about their mission. And it provided some genuinely nice moments. Now, despite the fact that this movie is called War for the Planet, it doesn't have much action scenes. In fact, the most action we see is in the first act. That being said, I really didn't mind too much. The storyline and characters still made sense in the end, and I was thoroughly entertained from beginning to end. And it's funny, but despite the fact that this movie isn't packed full of action, it still felt so huge and leaves an impact on you. So much in fact that as the day was coming to an end, this movie was still on my mind. Heck, it was still on my mind the very next day. And even though I ultimately like Dawn better, War leaves a much bigger impact on you. As for problems, I can only think of three. The first is that the pacing can drag a little bit at points. The movie had a good amount going on, but it just didn't feel as eventful as Dawn did. As a result, the pacing did feel like it was dragging a couple times, and that does actually make me question how this movie will fare on multiple viewings. Also, I thought that the Colonel, played by Woody Harrelson, was a great character. He even had a really smartly written motivation. My only problem with him is that I hated him, but I didn't despise him. I thought he could have been a lot more cruel, and as well as having a much bigger impact, it would have been perfectly fitting for his character. And my third and final problem is, as I mentioned earlier, the music did lack in quality in some scenes. And that's it, those really are my only complaints. War for the Planet of the Apes is a fantastic sequel and shows just what can be accomplished when you keep the studio out of the production and hire a director that has a clear vision and knows exactly what he is doing. So, after taking into account the pros, cons, and the impact this movie had on me, my score for War for the Planet of the Apes is a very strong 9 out of 10. It's happened, guys. We have another fantastic trilogy of movies, and much like the original Star Wars trilogy, this will always be remembered as a trilogy, even if the studio decides to release more sequels in the future. This is what movie studios should strive to do. Instead of telling filmmakers what to make and how to make it, they should select passionate directors and writers that are inspired to tell interesting stories rather than just focusing on the big generic action spectacle. These new Planet of the Apes movies manage to capture both. They tell wonderful stories while still being able to give us a big spectacle, and that's what separates this from many other sequels out there. Everything in this trilogy of movies naturally moves forward. The motivations connect, you see how they get from A to B to C and so on, and simultaneously, the characters are so incredibly interesting. So, Matt Reeves, you are now on my list of favourite directors, and I look really forward to seeing what you do with Ben Affleck's solo Batman movie. And I don't know about you guys, but I found it hilarious that he tossed out Affleck's current Batman script and is starting from scratch. That is awesome. Matt Reeves clearly wants to make a great movie and he is not going to rush forward with a lackluster script, something that Warner Brothers should learn from. Anyway, thanks so much for watching another episode of Quick Movie Reviews, guys. Please do let me know which of the 3 Ape movies you prefer and in what order would you rate them. For me, it's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and then it's kind of a toss-up between War and Rise of the Planet of the Apes, as I like both of them for different reasons. Also, don't worry, I am still hard at work with my Spider-Man Homecoming Versus video, so stay tuned for that. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch all of you next time. Take care.